Hello everybody, it's Riffraff Hornhelm, and I'm back again with another presentation from the Dwarven Vault. And today we're talking about another monster review. Once again, these are entry-level monsters taken from the original Dungeons & Dragons, who is 50 years old this year, and we're looking at entry-level subterranean monsters that are more common for lower to mid-level parties, as was originally produced for Dungeons & Dragons, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So today, we're going to talk about one of my favorites. One of, I think, many people's favorites, and that's the Mimic. The Mimic is a very interesting character. They have more than one type. Were you even aware of that? Kind of important to know. And the two types that are out there have gone through the same amount of change that we've seen from many of the common and popular monsters as Dungeons & Dragons has evolved over the past 50 years. Having said this, originally there were two types of mimics. A smaller mimic that was more intelligent, less aggressive, and one that you could negotiate with for information. Really important. And then there's the more aggressive, carnivorous, less smart. It does have intelligence, but it tends to be much more rudimentary than the smaller ones do. And these are the ones that are more popularized in the books and film, and everybody's memory of a mimic is more this carnivorous style. And of course, that version of the mimic is the one that we see so frequently in films and in memes and in dungeons throughout the world. The mimic has become one of the most symbolic monsters of AD&D, certainly representing the game. If you look at a mimic, you go, oh, Dungeons & Dragons. Pretty much the same for several other monsters as well that I can think of. Beholders, dragons, there's several owlbears. Bottom line is that the mimic has kind of been overplayed, and it always tends to evolve into a chest of some kind. Well, let's talk about the mimic. A mimic is not super high in hit dice. It is, however, able to morph itself to look like wood or stone. Okay? Yes, I know there's plenty of other things that have changed the mimic over the years, but the original mimic could look only like a wood item or a stone item. Typically a chest, maybe a barrel, a table, a door on a stone, a stairway. It's pretty open as to what you could do with this within the context of it being either wood or stone. So from a DM standpoint, mimics are kind of fun. You can do an awful lot with them, and you don't have to make them a nasty creature who is going to beat up the party. You can actually make it a helpful creature that for I think it says in the DM's the monster manual, for a consideration that the smaller mimics who are more intelligent will speak to you about what they've seen, pass them by. They can provide some information. Very useful. And properly handled, a mimic can actually be very helpful to an adventuring party, depending on what kind of mimic it is. Now, the larger ones are nasty, aggressive, and carnivorous. And they, unlike the smaller ones, will not stop to chat or have a discussion with you. They'll just try to eat you. Now, a mimic attacks using a pseudopod that comes out and whacks you. At the same time, they're able to stick to you so that they can hold you in place and pummel the snot out of you. Now, the more modern versions of mimics with great big teeth taking bites out of you and so forth, It's not really what was intended with a mimic. Yes, they will digest you, but they don't really look like that. Though, I have to agree that those look much cooler than the way they were originally envisioned for the game. So, when you talk to people about mimics, it's kind of hard to get a really good opinion of them because they tend to be so common and persistent with the same types of appearances that people get used to after a while. For instance, the proverbial chest. Every time you see a mimic now, it's a chest. Hell, even in the movies, it's that way. Well, that's not really the way it should be. And I have a lot more fun with mimics not being a chest. I think a beer barrel is a great way of doing them myself. I find other shapes to be more useful, things like creating a door or a doorway. That's a great way to nail characters if you're trying to get them by having a character inadvertently walk into a situation where the mimic then attacks them. Much more frequently, I prefer to use them as an information source, but it's been a long time since I've used them, frankly, because I think they're overused now within Dungeons and Dragons. They're just become way too common. They are a fun underground creature. You really can do a lot with them. As a DM, and talking amongst the HornhelmClan, we rank these pretty high. We like these as DMs. I would say more than a 5 in terms of difficulty because of the fact that the intelligence part of it gives you some wiggle room in terms of what it can do and how it can assist or interfere with an adventuring party. Now, from an adventuring party, okay, nobody really likes mimics because part of mimic is it's a surprise. And it's not a pleasant surprise. Okay, I get that. From a character view, they're very annoying, not necessarily the most powerful creatures. They tend to rank them, actually, very similar to what the DMs did. So, like around a 5, a mid-range creature that is annoying to them, can cause them a lot of damage, and generally just slows them down and makes life more difficult. So overall, in looking at these, we really feel that they're a mid-range creature, about a 5 or a 6 from a DM standpoint, probably about a 4 or a 5 from a player standpoint, and an awful lot of fun to interject in the game. Just be careful. Don't rely on what you see in the movies and what you see in memes and so forth. There's a lot more to a mimic than what you're seeing. And remember to explore all those options if you're a DM. And remember that those options can exist out there if you're a player before you get yourself in trouble. I hope you enjoyed this informative but short discussion about the mimic today. If you did, give us a like. If you really liked it, subscribe. What the hell? It doesn't cost any extra. And come back and see us again soon. Remember, dwarves rock.